I personally think in the next 5 years, anyone and everyone is going to have 2 jobs, not 1 job. We are meant to be unidimensional, not single dimensional. Firstly, you need to first create value creation, then only can you have wealth creation. It doesn't come the other way around, because if you're only looking at wealth creation, chances are going to create neither. If you can lower your sense of entitlement at every given stage, I think you've got a higher chance of success anytime, anywhere in which you want to go. Your ability to say no is very powerful. The bigger ability to say no to more things and yes to less things.
It's my pleasure to host Ronnie here. He's flown in from Mumbai just for this session with all of you. And for many of you who know him or may not know all the details about him, he's a man of myriad talents. He started UTV, which kind of revolutionized the media industry in India. He sold it to Disney for a significant amount of money and obviously created a lot of value. But that in itself is a story as to how somebody can sell their own baby. It's very hard to do that, I suspect. He's then moved into making movies. He's very well known for some of the movies he's made, like Rang De Basanti and Barfi and Swades, right? As well. And so he's turned into making movies. And now he's working on the education side, online education, unacademy. And the kind of work that he's doing is really pioneering.
upGrad, actually.
upGrad. What am I saying? Bad choice of words here. upGrad, which is doing probably the most successful, or I wouldn't say necessarily successful, but certainly the most impactful education business recently started that has a huge impact on India and will have a huge impact on India because it's such a big deal for our country. Ronnie, I'm going to start on the questions very quickly.
Go ahead.
Tell me, you defy conventional wisdom about domain expertise. You've gone from media and TV to making movies, to education, to building a foundation, Swadesh, which is a very large foundation, which is scaling across the country. How do you do that? Because that defies conventional wisdom. Most people are told to stick to their knitting and stick to their expertise. How does it work for you?
Well, firstly, good afternoon. I think there's no such thing as conventional wisdom, right? I think it's what you make of it, how you look at the opportunity. Domain expertise is important, but it's not critical, because at the end of the day, when you're looking at finding a new sector and a new industry, there's a fair bit today where you can actually catch up. 20 years back or 10 years back, you needed to either be a specialist or a generalist. Today, I think you have to straddle both. And I think you're getting a head start from that. I think my opportunity in media came at a very early stage, and it was opportunistic. I think education, learning, life skilling, for me was as important as storytelling. And in a way, actually, when we learn, it's a little bit like storytelling.
Yes.
In some form or the other.
Yeah.
So I think it's not about what you straddle and how you do it. I personally think in the next 5 years, anyone and everyone is going to have 2 jobs, not 1 job. I think the future of learning and the future of jobs, and that doesn't mean you're cheating on one job and you're cheating on the other job, not at all. I think it's just going to be that you're vocational. We are meant to be unidimensional, not single dimensional. This is different from multitasking, because when you look at multitasking, it's a little bit like being on the mobile and thinking you're going to pay attention. That's not the multitasking. But I think the future today is where people will want to be a specialist somewhere, a generalist somewhere. The ability for you to be able to straddle 2 things, because I think meaning in life is going to become more and more important.
Yeah.
What's my purpose? What's my impact? What do I want to do? I think a younger generation is only thinking on those lines. So I think we should be ready in the next 5 years for having at least 20-25% of the workforce looking at doing 2 things. Now you might say, there's a challenge for a primary job, so how about this 2-job basis? But I think we're going to be able to straddle more. So all I would say to people is, you're going to have to be able to look at being multitasking in slightly different ways if you really want to get there.
Yes, it's a very important point you're making about multitasking and being multidimensional in an increasingly complex world, and the ability to straddle both sides effectively. But I do want to ask you a little bit more about that. You created considerable wealth during that. Not that that's, well, perhaps it was the way you thought about starting it, but you created a lot of wealth in all the domains you have done. That in itself is very unusual. So there is a spark there. There's something there that allows you to build institutions in different domains, handle the prima donnas of Bollywood, deal with the education sector and today's aspirational youth, as well as the media and all the embedded, if I may say, mafia in those areas, which is hard to cut through. So there's still some magic there that you're being able to produce, which allows you to create that kind of wealth. Institutions.
Well, I'd like to first clarify between wealth creation and value creation.
Well done.
And firstly, you need to first create value creation, then only can you have wealth creation. It doesn't come the other way around, because if you're only looking at wealth creation, chances are going to create neither. So I think the goal is about value creation. That's one part. I also think today, when everyone is looking at starting up, which is pretty much what this entire session today is about, my only word of caution here is people rank the need for capital, and capital is number one. And I think that is something that is not going to get you that necessary always the success. Because if it's always number one, it's going to steer you in different directions and pull you in a direction which is going to be counterintuitive to what you really want to build and what is your vision. Because capital has to be a backing, capital has to be a catalyst. It cannot be the primary one. And I think media, the definition of the word unicorns, has pushed people in a psychological manner to actually pursue that if I can raise money, I'm already a success. Whereas actually when you raise money, you've got a liability on your hands in many ways. So I think just here for everyone's either in 2 years into a business, 5 years into a business, or just starting up, the context of differentiating first value creation versus wealth creation, and the context of how important we give to capital it's important, but it's not critical. And I think we make it critical and we make it a badge of honor. And I think that's when we slip sideways in executing on our vision.
Oh, entirely. I've always said that money is the largest commodity in the world. It's the only commodity. It's not differentiated. And yet, for some reason, capital is what too many people end up chasing versus the idea or the purpose. Ronnie, tell me a little bit more about, you've talked about the values that you build. For young entrepreneurs here, for the startup community, a lot of this is embedded in soft values. What are the kind of values you put into your company? What are the soft skills you need to build an institution? Talk a little bit about that. You've written about skilling also in your books. But talk a little bit about what is the advice you would give young startups, which ordinarily you can get about marketing, finance, so on and so forth. What is the soft stuff, the leadership stuff that you would talk about?
So, Pramod, I would say I'm a product of soft skills, not hard skills. I think I came from a very lower middle class background. And I think for the first 5, 7, 10 years, the reason I think I struck it out by being an entrepreneur is because I had no sense of entitlement, zero sense of entitlement, zero sense of being ability to be able to do that. So I think that grounding keeps you at a very, very different level in what you necessarily want to do. And I would say that's where you really need to start with, because the second, I would say, is the first part is always a little bit more opportunistic. But if you can lower your sense of entitlement at every given stage, I think you've got a higher chance of success anytime, anywhere in which you want to go.
Yeah, very important. I mean, I think, I guess I'm too old to say this perhaps, but certainly the sense that people are entitled to X, Y, and Z nowadays seems to pervade everything, and it's a bit too high. What else do you think? What is your form of leadership? How do you lead teams and people, motivate people?
Yes, coming back to your question on soft skills, as I said, I am a product of soft skills because I think at my early days, the confidence and the self-confidence that I brought was pretty much from there. Today, whether you like it in a job or anywhere else, is becoming more and more important in whichever way you want to do that. I think this theory for us at that very early stage of giving back, I think crept into me, and it's kept my balance across.
Very good.
Because I think as one grew from this absolutely no entitlement and this sense of a lower middle class where there was no debt, no equity, no angel investors, nothing when you're starting up. And then we started our little NGO. The the first 10,000 square feet, we rented in an office actually. We brought in 1,000 square feet into a little bit of an orphanage. Now that's counterintuitive, but I can tell anybody here that set the culture for the organization for the next 10 years. Everyone would work till 7, 8, 9, and then they would never go home because they were always going out there and spending time with either the kids or the old age people. And that somehow has kept me grounded. And I think that it was very small. At the time, I couldn't afford it. When we were taking debt, we were still trying to support an NGO. So I think this context that you need to arrive, or you need to have white hair, or you need to have a bank balance, or you need to have money in your pocket to give back is actually counterintuitive. But I think if there were two things that influence my culture and my soft skills, it would be my theater days as a hobby that allowed me to get self-confidence and the ability to give back at every given stage, which keeps you totally grounded.
Absolutely. But risk appetite comes in somewhere. You had the appetite to take risks. In my view, I think as a country, we need to take a lot more risk than we do. A lot of people tend to get, we get accolades very easily, and you get praised very easily. Whereas risk-taking really has to be far more fundamental in our DNA to be able to keep pushing, not just, at a young age, but when you're well into your 50s, 60s, whatever it may be.
No, I think risk is a very fearful word because most people think actually taking risks is equal to failure, which it is not.
Absolutely.
So I think that connection between the fear of failure and the risk actually stops a lot of people to do that. And there's a degree of risk. So everyone needs to take a risk based on the degree of their own risk. I think that's really the key part there.
Absolutely.
So I think when you look at risk is never one where you're taking a binary one where you're risking everything every single day. That context for risk, every day you're increasing your appetite for risk. My context was, what have I got to lose? Because my base camp at which I started was so low that that's the worst case you can get to. But as soon as you start growing and you have 40 people or 400 people, your ability to take risks has a higher sense of responsibility. But I would say go with the degrees that you're most comfortable with, not what peer pressure and what people give you around you that says, oh, but look what this one is doing and oh, look what that one's doing. Because the minute you start benchmarking with external people, you're already increasing your level of risk because you're trying to ape other people versus actually being comfortable with your own risk appetite.
Yes. Where did you learn all this? I know you say lower middle class, but is it family? Is it friends? Where does it come from, all of this fairly secure sense of being? And one more question added to that. What does wealth mean to you, if anything? What has it done to you? What does fame do? How do you handle it? What is your advice to people here, to some people here who might get fame very quickly and get wealth very quickly?
Yeah, I guess to your first question, without appearing facetious, I would say common sense. Actually, I don't think you kind of learn that. It is basically common sense. It's like swimming, right? The point is you can learn from a teacher, you can get in the shallow end, or you can jump in the deep end, fiddle around for 2 minutes, and then you're going to anyway swim because what option do you have? You're going to swim. So the sooner you get to the deep end versus the shallow end, the more common sense will come to you faster, quicker, better, and sharper. Right. I think wealth is a word which, like philanthropy, is a little evolved in itself. So I don't know, but I think creating value gives you a little bit of a liberated. For me, it means the power to say no more times than I would like to. Because the minute at some stage you have more resources, you can be a little bit more selective. Sometimes in the early stages, you have to be opportunistic. And therefore, you worry about saying no to many things because you feel, what if this opportunity was the best one and I missed it? And I think a little bit when you've created a certain sense of value or wealth, your ability to say no is very powerful. Yeah. And I think for me, if you ask me personally, that is what it means to me. The bigger ability to say no to more things and yes to less things.
But it changes your life in many ways, doesn't it?
Not really.
No?
Not really. You
that?
Read about that in the magazines or you read that in a couple of series, but I think not. I don't think not. I think each one to their own.
Life has stayed the same for you.
Totally.
Broadly.
Totally.
And failures, Ronnie, along the way?
Sorry?
Failures?
Oh, I think there would be, 3 failures a day in that context because I mean, I think my ratio, as I've said many times before, is about 8 failures to 2 successes. And I think the reason why my 2 successes may have been larger than normal is because of the 8 failures. Because then your risk appetite keeps increasing as you go forward. But I think this context that a failure, the failure is a word which I think for a lot of people sounds like a full stop, right? I mean, when it's a comma. And I think that's the key part here, because everyone thinks failure means it's the end of a road and the beginning of a new road. But if you look at this as just, it's a moving train on which things will happen and things will drop off and things will not, then you won't magnify this element and sort of epitomize failure in a very different manner.
It's also a recognition, isn't it, of failure, that it's not the end of the world. If it failed, so what? You move on the next day and you'll learn.
I mean, I think in the Western world, in the US, you get more likely to get funded.
Yes.
If you fail twice.
A few times.
Because then failure is on the asset side of your balance sheet, not on the liability side of your balance sheet.
What do you think about the opportunity for all these people here, the young people in India today? What is your view on it?
Look, I think the small and medium scale sector is deeply ignored by the media. Thanks for this constant epitomization of unicorns, which are mythical in the first place and create false level of ambitions with people.
I think that's a very important point. I don't know how many people realize that unicorn is a mythical object.
It's also
not
a curse. I would like to say it's a curse.
Right.
It's a curse because look, the first 100 unicorns that happen here, right now, I think there are only 20 of them that are already unicorns. 80 have not. Some of them will not be unicorns. Some of them are already not unicorns. So I think it's a curse because you set yourself at a benchmark created by maybe 3 or 4 investors that have given that sense of capital and give you that value. Then suddenly you're chest thumping in the whole thought process. And it's very difficult from there to go up because it's an unrealistic benchmark that you've set yourself at a very early stage in your business or in the mid-level of your business. And then it's very tough to go there. But if you ask me about the opportunities here, I think in the small and medium scale sector, I think the number of people I'm meeting in entrepreneurs today that are in the space technology is mind-blowing. Just that one sector. Or in the care sector. Or in the sector that I'm in, which is more education and skilling. These are, more than food delivery and transport and e-commerce, which had, I think, its whole decade of what it needs to be. The opportunities here are incredible. However, the mindset to execute and be extremely resilient has got to be there. I have to say our work ethics are not the best for us to be able to get the results, whether we like it or not. Because we set ourselves goals and 9 out of 10 times, I think it's absurd today where you will find that somebody who's in your team feels it's okay one day before a task is to be completed that they'll inform you, well, it's not happening tomorrow. So when you're dealing with that kind of work ethics, it's almost impossible to excel. So somehow in your building, you have to build this context of 2 steps forward, 1 step back, and still keep going forward. That requires a very different gutsy approach to what you want to necessarily do. So I think the opportunities are here. The opportunities are not in the sectors that are glamorized by the media. The opportunities are not about just raising money and capital and chest thumping. But otherwise, I think the DNA that we have got here in India, I think we're looked at enviously by many countries just with our ability to find solutions and work there. And lastly, I would say operating in India is a competitive edge. It is a competitive edge because if you can do that, it's a little bit like driving in India. If you're driving in India, I don't think you can drive overseas constantly. But I think if you're operating in India, there is definitely a sense of a competitive edge because you've understood that. And when global companies come here, they're not going to be able to survive with our global Indian management.
Well, that as well as the demographics of India make us a very enviable place to be right now, right? In terms of
demographics is strong, but we're a price-sensitive country.
Yes.
So watch out because just premium sector is not good enough. Just mass sector is not good enough. Just addressing a total addressable market or TAM, which is theoretically defined, is not. Every time you have to market make. So I think that's a big challenge.
That's a big clarity. I have always felt that India represents probably the best opportunity in the world at some level because we have so many shortages in so many areas, whether you look at education, media, entertainment, tourism, IT, whatever it may be.
But the consumer is not willing to freely pay. It's not. It's not. It's a tough market. This whole subscription model, the X model of they're not that easy. They're not that easy to execute.
No, it isn't. But equally, we can make. It's what is amazing is that we've learned how to make frugal products really well, and so we beat the world. We can teach the world how to make products very frugally and really well.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
I'm being waved away here by everybody saying that time is up. Ronnie is a remarkable guy, folks. Please look him up as much as you can. He is the original startup mogul. He's done this multiple times, created multiple institutions. I'm going to ask him one last question, then they're going to throw us off stage. Ronnie, what are you most proud of?
I think our foundation today, again, because it's kept the family together in a very different manner. I think we've had very strong values. It's kept my mindset frugal. And I think in India, if you're frugal, you're bound to succeed.
That's a fantastic takeaway. Multidimensional, frugal, and lots of ways to think about building purpose without thinking about being a unicorn. Ronnie, thank you a million times for being here. Really appreciate it.